We want to build the #1 international baseball league.
Oh, what a catch! What a catch, baby!
Like I said, I feel blessed.
The pitcher grabbed by Schlitter goes for the force of the plate.
Ground ball, double play, game over. Wow!
This is a money ball, gentlemen, and this.
Oh, money ball!
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Baseball United podcast, the premier voice of international baseball. I'm your host, Liam Skiffington, and today I am honored to be joined by Executive Vice President and Vice Chairman and co-founder of Baseball United, Mr. John Miedreich. John, thanks so much for your time today. How are you doing?
Skiff, really honor and privilege to be here. Thanks for having me. I heard that intro. If that intro doesn't get you juiced up, I'm not sure what will.
All right, John. So we got a lot to cover today for sure, but I want to kind of start off by talking about your career before Baseball United a little bit and what kind of led you into this career path with the league.
Yeah, so I have what I like to say an untraditional baseball background. Really spent most of the early part of my career in public service. I started as a New York City police officer at 21 years old, responded to the Twin Towers on that fateful day, 9/11. Was there working in the rescue and recovery operations for the next month. So after that, didn't really realize how much that would affect my life. Later on in my career, went on to be deployed to Amman, Jordan, in the region, working in and around the GCC and the greater Arabian subcontinent as a liaison and an intelligence role in Jordan. When I came back to New York City after spending 2.5 years in that part of the world, I came back. I was the commander of global operations for NYPD from 2013 till I retired in 2021 for 8 years, where I basically ran the strategic direction as well as the day-to-day operations of our global intelligence footprint. At the same time, my wife's from the Dominican Republic, spent a ton of time going back and forth between New York and the DR. Got involved early on in baseball philanthropically, helping support little leagues and kids aspiring to become high-level baseball players there. That gave me the opportunity to meet some fine people and also to really learn a ton about the business of baseball, where I was actually involved in and was part owner of one of the baseball academies down in the Dominican Republic, in Santiago to be specifically. Went on to sign many kids to professional contracts in one of the 30 major league organizations. So in this opportunity to take a passion and something I love, the game of baseball, to a part of the world that I'm very familiar with, this was just an unbelievable opportunity and something I surely couldn't pass up.
Wow. Okay. So a couple things to dissect there. So first and foremost, it sounds like you were thrown into a leadership role kind of young in your career. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say I was. I mean, early on, like I said, I was a patrolman in Brooklyn, New York, in a really densely populated urban environment. Got promoted to the rank of sergeant, which is the first level supervisor, at a very early age. Actually, at the time when I was promoted, I was the youngest sergeant in the NYPD at the time. The NYPD, just for perspective, is a 53,000 person organization, $6 billion budget. So it was awesome to learn from the School of Hard Knocks there, and just understand how important things like communication and character are to making a good cop. I think that it's something that I've learned and kind of it's helped me in this career. Surely, what I'm doing now in Baseball United.
Okay. Wow. So let's talk a little bit more about the academy that you were running in the Dominican Republic, or helping run in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, so basically, as I said, I started just first philanthropically, bringing equipment down to the DR. So, the end of the baseball season here, I don't know, Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that was running a, after season sale where the gloves were 75% off. I would just take money out of my own pocket. It was actually myself and my brother and a great friend of ours, Victor Campos, and we would just spend, a few $100 each and, load a suitcase up with gloves and just start handing them out. That led to us, really falling in love with one particular little league, really in Santiago, Dominican Republic, as I said. Then we went and supported them and put uniforms on the 300 kids' backs that played there. We winded up fixing up the field, started actually converted another open lot next to that field into another baseball field. Just being exposed and falling in love with the development piece. There, I met and worked with some of, I believe, the best baseball minds around when it comes to the player development perspective, and just been getting exposed to that early on. I really took to developing players at an early age and developing capacity of an overall athlete, which led to the academy piece. And then from there, we had this little league, right, with a few hundred kids. Out of that, we were able to identify and really scout players that we thought had the potential, to play at a higher level or at the highest levels. When those players identified themselves, usually what would have happened is they went off to another academy at some, other area of the country. Now that we had our own academy, we were able to keep those kids in house, further develop them physically, mentally, put them through a schooling system, nutrition, all the different, and then ultimately market them to one of the 30 organizations.
How would you say that experience down in the Dominican Republic kind of shaped your understanding as baseball as a global sport?
Well, it was just unbelievable. When you look at baseball there compared to, like, let's say here in the U.S., I mean, I believe it's a totally different monster. I mean, it's a way of life. It's a piece of the culture. I don't care, who you are or where you're from on that island. Everyone has an awareness, and mostly, vastly, the vast majority have a love for the game. Culturally, I just think that what I really realized from a very early age, from a development perspective, was what I'm talking about here. I think that Dominicans, and I'm talking about Latin Americans now overall, I think they do a superior job at the earlier ages than we do here in the United States, or they do in other parts of the world, with building a potential, an athlete's athletic capacity from, like, a bottom rung at a grassroots, at a foundational level, if you will. And, not a ton of time is spent on skills like hitting and throwing and running or fielding at the early age. It's all about building athletic capacity. As the player continues and builds upon their own athletic capacity, when you integrate baseball skills into that, athlete's repertoire, they're a much more complete player. So I think that what I learned early on was how important it is to develop an athlete first who eventually plays the game of baseball. Whereas here in the United States, it's, I personally believe, a little bit backwards in the sense that we develop players' skills, and they may never have the athletic capacity to play at a higher level because they hit a glass ceiling. Now, you're probably going a little long. I'm probably going a little longer than you want on this, but what I would say is one of the things that I learned, that was early on in my career and just getting exposed and understanding, and I kind of lived and died by that, in the early years in my baseball journey. But what I've come to really realize, and I can appreciate both sides, I really can appreciate how high level and um, the skills development here in the States and in other places, Japan, and whatnot, are very high level. And what's so great about it is I think that there's no one best system. I think that what we here at Baseball United, at least in the baseball operations department under Kash's leadership, what we've been able to do is really adopt the best of all the different experiences and worlds that we have had the experience to be exposed to.
Have you always had an affinity for baseball?
Yeah, I think I have, for sure. I mean, obviously, remember playing early on as a kid. I often say that, I'm not sure I got a hit past the age of 12 years old. So I surely had a love and affinity for sports, and baseball surely being one of them. My future surely wasn't as a player. So, it's funny the way things work and funny the way life works, to now to be in the position that I'm in, and kind of sitting over the top of baseball operations as the EVP of baseball operations for Baseball United. But always loved the game, always loved being around the game. Really, the Dominican Republic experience probably rejuvenated that in me, for sure. But something I've always been drawn to, sure.
So, as the EVP of baseball operations for Baseball United, what are some of your primary responsibilities?
So my responsibility, in coordination and cooperation with the greater organization, and really under Cash's leadership, my job is to, player procurement, to develop the rosters, to compete on the field, to build out the coaching staffs necessary, to procure the equipment necessary to play the events. As you can imagine, it's not like we can just show up at a sporting goods store and buy a dozen baseballs. None of that exists in the part of the world that we're launching in, right? The Middle East and South Asia. So procuring equipment to be able to be transported and exported over there is under my responsibility. Also, the conversion of the field. So, as you know, there's no professional baseball playing surfaces in that part of the world. Well, there is once we, our conversion is complete of the cricket stadium or the soccer stadium that we're playing in. But there is no full-time baseball infrastructure. So in 2023, when we converted Dubai International Stadium, which is a 25,000 seat cricket stadium, into a professional level baseball playing surface, that's under my responsibility as well to, understand where to source the clay from, or, where to get the equipment from, how the actual, operation and the execution of that field conversion must take place all, is under my responsibility. I would say one of the greatest compliments that myself and Kash received in regards to that field conversion is when Robbie Cano stepped out onto that field, into his second base position and said, if you would have never told me this wasn't a professional baseball field, I wouldn't believe you. So at that point, it kind of was Robbie Cano's stamp of approval, which is a pretty high bar considering he played, in some of the arenas that he played in. So good stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what was some of the player feedback you guys got about the conversion of that field? Because being there and just seeing the conversion happen firsthand, it was absolutely beautiful. I obviously was not playing on the field, but it looked beautiful.
No, from the feedback that we received was all positive. I mean, nothing's perfect, and we had to, make some adjustments and concessions here and there because, again, when you're converting a cricket field, you're not going from, start like you would here building a stadium in the United States, where it's starting as a baseball field and the build is specific to a baseball field. We were dealing with an existing, uh, playing surface in an existing stadium that we had to convert to the best level possible. We did have to make a couple of concessions, but we did that and put on, we truly believe, a very, very high level, quality playing surface. And we've only received great feedback from everyone from the managers to the coaches, the spectators. So it was really cool.
How long did that process take, John, from like ideation into execution?
Probably a little bit longer than one would think. And the reason why I would say that is because a lot of the time, effort, and resources were put into the early stages of it. It was the notion, it was the idea. And then being able to create the intellectual property and the understanding of, okay, great. Yeah, we all, as American baseball fans, can picture, if you just close your eyes, you can picture what a field should look like. That's one piece of it. But when you don't have access to materials such as clay and silt in the desert, right? It's not that easy to just, to convert that field. So early on, a lot of the intellectual property that was developed was how do we source and where do we source these materials from? How do we get them to cross? I mean, we brought in clay from Pakistan, let's say, and silt from India. How do we, create the how can legally, even just from a customs declaration transportation perspective, how do we figure that piece out? Which all of those things we were able to do very early on and really put our effort into the development of the intellectual property and the knowledge on how to do it. The build out itself, believe it or not, was a lot quicker than one would think, though. The actual conversion of the field and the execution of it, but the preparation was really where a lot of the time and effort went into.
Beyond the field, John, or the execution of building the field, could you talk about like a significant challenge you guys faced just putting on that showcase?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, specific to the field, we shipped in a ton of clay, as I said, from Pakistan and India. And when we started the conversion, we realized that although the clay was at a substantial quality that we could utilize it in the base pits and on the mound, there was particular areas such as the pitcher's landing pad on the mound or within the two batters boxes in the catcher's box that really it's like high impact areas. the clay wasn't up to let's say the purity or the standard necessary that we would need for a professional game. So like last minute, we had to figure out how to airlift, clay out of the United States for these important high impact areas of the field. And that was literally within a week or two of the event to kick off. So just even something like that was a learning experience that we were able to, pull off with sheer minutes, let's say, to spare, but we were able to do it and execute at a high level. But that's a great example of no matter how we planned, we had to be able to pivot, as our CEO often says, and kind of figure it out, on the go.
So I know that here at Baseball United, we have a kind of definitely a small team. When you guys are doing those last minute changes, having those last minute challenges, how are you and your role managing everybody else on your team and like kind of keeping it calm?
Yeah. Well, it's a great point. I mean, I think one of the things that I've learned from Kash on this, 3 year, roller coaster ride of which is Baseball United on this entrepreneurial journey, the highs and lows and the challenges is, the ability to pivot, the ability also to wear multiple hats, right? I think that what I've learned particularly is that, there's no job too big or small for anyone. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of humility and reality in that, but it's not just a catchphrase. It really is what we need to survive and to sustain and to grow as an organization. Because, although my title on paper may be EVP of baseball operations, in reality, if I got to get a shovel and a pick and actually start, converting the field myself, which at times I actually had to do, then that's just what it takes. And I think that leadership, and we see it with our own leader in our CEO and chairman, Kash, that, if we have a leader who's willing to lead from the front and be involved and really lead as a leader who is hands-on, who is willing to get his hands dirty, then we all can do the same. So from my perspective, I think that's leadership. Just that is leadership all in of itself. It's the essence of leadership. So myself trying to, emulate that, I truly just believe that, being willing to do anything at any time to make the dream, possible and to keep the dream alive, then I think then you're just asking the people who are working with you, not necessarily below you, but working with you to just, be on an even path and on an even like playing field and, push the ball forward when necessary, however they're asked to do so.
I want to continue on that path of Cash's leadership. We've talked about it a few different times on this show, but he really is an incredible leader. And John, I'm curious, how does he compare to some of the leaders you've worked with throughout all of your careers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Liam. I think that Kash is a unique individual. And I would say that, you know, um, with the highest level of praise possible. I mean, I've worked for some pretty incredible leaders in my career, but I would say that Cash is, you know, somebody that's a one in a million. The reality is somebody who tirelessly, is on a journey to better himself, to better the team, to put us in a position to win, to set a high bar. Right? Oftentimes, better than anyone. We talk oftentimes about comparing Baseball United as let's say a corporate entity as a championship level sports team, and the bar on a championship level sports team has to be set high. Each particular position on the field, 1 through 9, has to perform at a higher level for the game to be won. And the bar has to be set high from the ownership, from the management, the clubhouse leaders. And it's no different here in Baseball United. I think that does a phenomenal job, a fantastic job of clearly, defining what needs to be done, setting the bar at a level that pushes everyone, to break free of their comfort zone. As we know, all growth, is made, on the other side of your comfort zone, and him setting the bar there, and most importantly, him setting his own bar even higher than that, surely inspires me, and I truly believe everyone else on the team to push further, dig deeper, do a little bit more than we thought we could, right? And to get on the other side of our comfortability factor to really make this possible, because what we're doing is hard. If Kash often says, if we were opening up in a flower shop on the other, down the road, it would be difficult. Never mind a professional baseball league on the other side of the world in a desert. So if everyone's not performing at the highest possible level, it's impossible to do. But to have a leader who fearlessly leads from the front, who tirelessly and endlessly has a vision in his mind and is willing to execute it at all costs is a great inspiration to myself and I believe to everyone else on the team.
Now, John, as you know, I've only been with the organization for a little bit of time now, and I know you've been here since the jump. I'm curious, honestly, Kash has already had an impact on me, the way he leads, the way he does everything that he does, the way he goes through meetings. Literally every single thing he does, I find myself in awe of. And I'm curious, as someone who's been here from the jump, in what ways has working with him contributed to your personal growth?
Endless ways, endless ways. I mean, I've had the blessing and the honor to be here, you know, watching and learning from him for the past 3 years, to be exposed. Really, when I left the NYPD, and the reason I say that, somebody said to me that you had a front row seat ticket to the greatest show on earth, which was the NYPD and the inner workings on a daily basis, and that was true for that time. But I truly believe what I was able to learn in the past 3 years, particularly from Kash and the things that I've been exposed to through him in this organization, honestly are second to none in the world. And just myself, holding myself accountable, trying to be more organized, understanding and acknowledging where I'm falling short and pushing myself not to make excuses why I fell short, and just trying to right those wrongs. These are things that that I've been able to leadership is deliberate is another thing that Kash often says. And myself in my career probably didn't think of that too much. I just led, let's say, but I wasn't so deliberate in every single decision that I made. So these are things that I've been exposed to and things that I've learned from. I mean, quite frankly, selling. I mean, being a salesman in many ways. I just learned the art of communication in many ways. So just so much. I mean, I could go on for days, but just really so much. So blessed, so grateful for the opportunity to be able to continue to learn.
And not to sound redundant, John, but I do want to ask what makes Kash's approach to leadership so unique?
Well, I think that he cares, right? You I think that's really where it all stems from. He cares about the team. He cares about the dream. He cares about the mission. He cares about the impact we're making on the world. And I think that he truly cares about all of those things. And I believe that, you know, every action and every intention, every action is with the intention of doing the right thing in a principled manner. And when you have a leader who does that, then it's easy to follow, because the reality is, the right thing is being done for the right reasons with the right people. So, you know, um, there's a lot that sets him apart, but I believe that innate leadership uh, skill and is something that was developed in Kash over time through trials and tribulations, through failing and really winning, right? And then he brings all of that experience to the forefront, and he is the 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 person that we need to lead this organization.
I've really been amazed by his ability to adapt and pivot with everything that goes on in this organization. And I'm curious, Sean, what role does adaptability play in his leadership strategy, in your opinion?
Oof, it's right up there at the top, because what we're doing, as I said before, is not easy, right? And it's like, it's oftentimes we're shooting at a moving target, right? And the ability to pivot at any particular point because of current global events such as a war taking place in a region, and then the ability to pivot and still keep this thing afloat, and actually at the end of it, um, you know probably make it a more powerful impact than if we stayed with our original plan. I mean, these are things that are just something that I've, and oftentimes at awe of. And, I think the ability to pivot and continually keep the ship, in a direction where we're moving forward, um, is just a skill that's second to none, really, in the world that I've seen Cash time and time again exhibit. And I think that, to your point, that ability is right up there from the top of the list of valuable assets in his leadership strategy. I truly believe.
So BU recently signed, I guess it's probably a month or two ago now, they signed a partnership with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They announced that they're going to launch 3 franchises in the kingdom. How big is that for the organization, John?
Huge, huge. I mean, everyone can just look at what Saudi Arabia has done over the past, let's say, 5 years. I mean, they truly want to be the epicenter of the sporting world. So to sign this agreement, really with the Saudi government is just an unbelievable opportunity for us to share America's pastime, American goodwill, with the region through the power player that is Saudi Arabia. There's so much on the horizon there. There's so much opportunity. We oftentimes like to say, where will they be in 30 years? You know, uh, I'm sure they're going to be in a much better position than they are today. And we want to play a role, obviously, and make baseball a pillar of that as they move forward and really evolve in who they are as a country. And, there's so much room for growth. And the reality is, one scratch of the head. We got the oldest professional sport in the world, baseball. They've adopted everything: boxing, MMA, soccer, and all the other things that they do. F1 racing. The next, natural fit. We truly believe the next great thing is baseball, and we truly believe that they are going to embrace baseball with open arms, and they have, obviously, through this agreement. And we're just going to continue to build upon that. So exciting times, in the future for that.
I do want to talk about the future of Baseball United. And in your own words, John, where do you see this league going in the next 10 years?
Well, we truly believe that we could be the number one international league in the world, right outside of the United States. That's our goal. We're playing in the quote unquote winter ball window. We don't necessarily, call ourselves a winter ball league, but just because of the climate of the region that we're playing in, we're playing over that time frame. So we truly believe that we could be the premier baseball product from, from the November to February timeframe. That's where I believe we will be. I also believe that, we have an opportunity here to impact, all of us collectively to have a tremendous impact really on the world in a positive manner. Because I truly believe if we continue to do what we're doing, if we continue to execute, we continue to focus, and really make the impossible possible, this league has a chance, and I truly believe will outlast every one of us who are working here today. So, that would be my wish, where I see this at the end of the day.
So many great players played in Dubai last year. You mentioned Robinson Cano. We had 3-time World Series champion Pablo Sandoval, 4-time Gold Glover Andrelton Simmons. So many players from all over the world. What goes into finding these players and signing them to a team?
There's right now there's this opportunity among the baseball playing community where there's not a ton of opportunity and a lot of talent. So, there's no shortage of players that we can find, high level professional players that we can find to play and really contract to play in Baseball United. But it's more than that. Myself under Cash's leadership, myself and Eddie Diaz, my VP of baseball operations, Eddie's done a tremendous job with bringing high quality baseball players in. But it's important to us as a brand and as a league that the players are also high quality individuals off the field, right? Because as we grow the game, the game and the play is going to speak for itself. But it's so important that whoever is playing has bought into this opportunity to bring the game of baseball to this new market, to this new part of the world, to inspire new fans to fall in love with the game, to engage with the public and the people. So, as important as the level of player, the level of that player's character is equally as important here in Baseball United. So, what we've been able to do is build a pretty significant database of potential players. We're getting, actually players reach out to us on a daily basis. We get dozens of outreach a day, of professional level players who want to become a part and want an opportunity to play in some of the fastest growing economies in the world and some of the world's most iconic cities like Dubai and Riyadh and some of the others. But really trying to find the best players with the highest level of character is what's important, we believe, surely in these early days, but, most likely as we move forward as well.
You mentioned Eddie Diaz, John. Could you speak on his experience in baseball? Because I'm not sure that a lot of people in the audience truly know the legend of Eddie Diaz, so to speak.
Eddie Diaz is like, what I like to call, a baseball journeyman in many ways. Eddie was signed as a minor leaguer out of the Dominican Republic at 17 years old within the Cleveland Indians organization. Spent about 5 years in the minor league system. Eventually got released. Was playing out in Waterloo, Iowa, where he met his wife Diane, and they soon got married. Eddie's out of the game. He moved to New York. Spent some time, in real estate sales, spent some time in selling insurance. So he was out of the game for a good 10 years. Gets back into the game, starts his own agency, sports agency, where he repped a lot of players, to go, Latin American players, particularly to go out and play in Asia. Then gets involved down in Mexico. He becomes a manager of one of the Mexican professional LMB teams, Liga Mexicana Baseball. Spends time as a manager there, spends time as a manager in the Dominican Professional League. Really from there went on to become a general manager, goes up, becomes president, part owner of one of the franchises. So in Mexico, with us in Baseball United as really our VP of baseball ops, very, very much responsible for putting the product that was on the field. I got to give so much of the credit to Eddie and Kash for the players that were on the field in November, those legendary players that we had, high-level players that we had. So Eddie's done everything literally from player to coach to agent to bench coach to manager to general manager, all the way up to president of, professional teams, particularly in the Caribbean, what I would say is a lot of Eddie Diaz's expertise in the winter league seasons, the Caribbean ball, has kind of given us, we have a ton of obviously Major League Baseball talent and knowledge on our, within our owners group. Eddie definitely brings a unique experience out of, the league, Mexican League, the Dominican League, and some of the Latin American baseball winter league circuits. That's kind of given us, I would say, some great experience that we've been able to put into place here with our league, for sure.
I think you forgot to mention he's one of the nicest guys in the world as well.
Well, I'll let you say that. I wouldn't give him that. But Eddie's a great guy. Eddie's a great guy. He's actually in 2 baseball Hall of Fames. He's in the Yaquis of Obregon Hall of Fame as one of the most winningest managers in the Mexican League. He's also in the Hall of Fame from San Pedro Macorís, which is his hometown of the Dominican Republic, for all he's achieved in the game. So although we have, 3 Hall of Famers on our board, or, Major League Baseball Hall of Famers on our board of directors, we do have, Eddie Diaz, who's a 2-time Hall of Famer in 2 different Hall of Fames. So, it's an honor and privilege to work with Eddie every day and to just put his expertise and experience, to put that to use every single day here in Baseball United.
You mentioned the ownership group, John, and the Baseball United ownership group is certainly the most prestigious in all of sports, like throughout the world. What goes into bringing a new owner in? I'm not sure how deeply you are involved in bringing new owners and new investors in, but what goes into that?
Well, I would say, the ownership group led by Kash, obviously, is, one of our co-founders and, our main shareholder at the moment, but really, who is, a Hall of Famer, a business Hall of Famer in his own right, I truly believe. But, I've played a role with Kash in a supporting role to bring in many of these legendary owners. One of the things that is so awesome is that, all of the guys, the 20 Major League Baseball legends that we currently have, who are co-owners with us, the reality is all of these guys are just passionate about growing the game, helping people, giving people opportunities. So, when we start that initial conversation with them about the opportunity, we've actually selected the 20 that we have with us. There's others who wanted to come in who aren't here today because they just weren't a right cultural fit, or just wasn't right for us or for them. The 20 that we have, these guys are salt of the earth, human beings. It's not only about money. It's not about money. Money may be the top three, but as we say oftentimes in Baseball United, and Kash, to quote, says, it's about positively impacting the world. It's about doing it with the right people. And lastly, number three is hopefully we make some money out of it, because we make some money, we can help more people. So, when we're going after those potential co-owners, those are things that, the character of those individuals is so important. It's not just about bringing in a guy who's a Hall of Famer. It's about bringing in a guy who's a Hall of Famer who understands the responsibility that he has to, to promote the game in a positive way, to grow the game, to help kids. Lark often speaks about grassroots development and bringing opportunities. I know that during his podcast, he went deep into that, and how passionate he is on that. Mariano, how philanthropic he is. These are all guys that, are tested leaders as well in the locker rooms. And, these are just the right people to build with.
Lark also mentioned on the last podcast the importance of diversity and inclusivity and creating opportunities for not just baseball players, but people like me that cover the sport all, from top to bottom. How important is that to you, John?
Well, it's hugely important to me, and that's something that Lark has talked about as one of the, the co-founders of Baseball United. As you know, we started this journey really under a different, entity, where myself and Kash had met. Mariano and Lark were involved in that entity. We When we were on that journey, we kind of, uncovered that some things weren't be do at that time. The then CEO was not doing things ethically or in the right manner. And at that point, it was so important to us, myself and Kash, and to kind of figure out, hey, we want to keep the dream alive, but it's not worth doing things in an unprincipled manner, right? So we made this shift, and we kind of created what is Baseball United with Mariano and Barry, and now we've been on that journey ever since, right? And then to really, I think it was important to give that context, because it's important to me, and it's important to the whole co-founders group, that we do give opportunities to individuals who haven't gotten opportunities historically, whether it was in leagues in the United States or anywhere else, as well as create opportunities for people in this new part of the world. So to your point, somebody who has a really mathematical mind and loves the game of baseball may not have a future as a baseball player, but potentially could be a statistician in our league, right? And Baseball United, and why I went back to the founding of it, is it was based off of the principles of doing things the right way with the right people, and building this, from a strong foundation, which is giving opportunities to people who may not have had one in the past.
John, in your role, how do you balance short-term tactical decisions with like the long-term vision for the league?
Well, I think everything is, a cost benefit analysis, scale, right? So, what is it that's necessary? What is it going to cost, right? And it's not only a dollars and cents cost, right? What could it cost from a marketing perspective? What could it cost from an exposure perspective, a vulnerability perspective? Whatever that cost is, right? What is the potential benefit? What is the potential cost, right? And I think that if you look at, all decisions through that lens, it gives you the best chance, I believe, to make the best strategic decision in order to put the organization in a place to win. I think that anytime a decision is being made, obviously, I speak, multiple times a day to Kash, who's really driving the direction, of the organization. And I need to be, as the vice chairman, but also as the EVP of baseball operations, to be plugged into where Kash is driving the ship, because all of my decision making should be in line with the greater, goals of the organization, right? We can't have, one department within the organization making, siloed decisions. Everything's got to be made in support of the overall mission and overall goal of the organization. And, as long as that's what's being done and the intention's in the right place, then I think that, for the most part, we'll be in a good place after those decisions are made.
John, I'm curious, as a co-founder, why the Middle East why bring a baseball league to the Middle East?
Well, when you look at the Middle East and South Asia, where we're launching, this is one of the youngest, most diverse, most sports crazed areas in the world, right? So when you're just talking about the demographics, and you probably know them better than anyone because you've heard Kash, talk about this often, but there's 2 billion people living in the landmass that we're looking to really launch in. Those 2 million people, 2 billion people. I think I said 2 million, but 2 billion.
2 billion. I gotcha.
2 billion people, right? 1 billion are fans of the number one bat and ball sport on earth. But when you look at the how young and diverse this market is, the average age of a person living in India is 28. The average age of a person living in Pakistan, 24. The average person living in the Middle East, 31 years of age. These are some of the youngest, most vibrant sports loving communities on earth. So we believe that, we often call this area of the world, the Middle East and South Asia, really the last frontier, right? That baseball has. So you have baseball here, in North and South America. You have baseball in Far East Asia. It's starting to really take a little bit more hold in Europe. But this is really the last frontier that really baseball hasn't conquered, if you will. So we saw this as a tremendous white space opportunity to share, the American pastime, America's premium sport with this part of the world.
Obviously, cricket's huge in that part of the world, John. What's the main challenge of converting these cricket fans into baseball fans?
Well, I would say that, there's the skills are transferable, right? You hit, you throw, you run, and you field. There's nuances in how you do that in each sport, right? There's definitely nuances in how you do that. But I think that we have a great opportunity to really reach that cricket fan base and kind of create a small bridge and invite some of those, cricket enthusiasts or cricket lifers to come over and delve into the game of baseball. Kash often talks about, to love the game, you got to, learn the game. So a lot of what we're doing is teaching the game of baseball, right? And teaching the game of baseball through the lens of a cricket player, right? So during our showcase event, as you're well aware, in November, we had Nick Swisher in the booth calling the games on the broadcast. We also have Shoaib Akhtar, who is he was the fastest bowler or the hardest thrower in cricket. So having both of those gentlemen in the booth, one from the perspective of baseball, one from the perspective of cricket, talking about the similarities, differences, and nuances of the game is a great teaching strategy, right? So I think that we are going to do it. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're going to continue to, inspire some of these fans to come over, these cricket fans to come over and continuously engage us in the game of baseball. We have many proprietary strategies to do that. Again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's, a process that's going to take some time, but I think that teaching the game of baseball is at the forefront of really making that happen.
Teaching the game of baseball, I would assume that has to start at a young age, right? Especially if you want to have these native players from that region.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that it's, two-pronged. And, Kash reminded me this the other day. As you know, I was talking about my background in player development out of the region, out of the Dominican Republic. So when I kind of put that hat on in the region of India, Pakistan, and the Middle East, I see great opportunity to develop camps and clinics and create, this affinity for baseball players in that region, right? that's where my head went. But Kash, reminded me that it's a two-prong approach. It's also teaching and inviting the fans to come and participate at the field, at the ballpark, and understand it from that perspective. So, when we talk about development and teaching of the game, our mind and your mind, I think, went straight to teaching the execution of playing the game of baseball, or the development piece. That is true. But again, I think there's another way to invite, everyone, of all ages, ethnicities, creeds, colors, into genders, into the circle of Baseball United, and teaching the game of baseball that everyone could participate in. Everyone could show up to the field and experience it, the game of baseball, in some way or another. And, it's not just about teaching the kids how to play the game, which is a huge piece of what we're doing in the future for sure. That grassroots development is key to the growth and the sustainability. But really, it's also about teaching the opportunity and the cultural experience of coming to the game and experience a game out of the ballpark is critical to what we're doing as well.
John, last year during the showcase, you guys obviously made history. It was the first ever professional baseball game played in that region. At what moment did you kind of take a step back and you were like, wow, we did this. This happened. All our hard work, everything we've been working for these last 3 years or so finally came to fruition.
Oh, that's an easy answer for me because I remember exactly what it was. I talked about this nearly 3-year journey we've been on. I referenced the roller coaster ride that it's been, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of highs and lows. We have a leader in Kash who pushed on and pushed through and inspired us to do the same. And I'll tell you, sometimes it felt like it wasn't going to be possible, and we figured out a way to do the impossible. For me, it was the first time a professional baseball was thrown on the field. It was that first practice in which we had the East All-Stars and the West All-Stars locker rooms, next to each other. We had a joint practice, both teams on the field at the same time, the first practice ever. Both teams walked out of the left and right field fences, respectively, to walk onto the field. I happened to be there. Kash was out, was not at the field at that time. He was out doing, pushing the business forward and doing other critical things necessary, as we were only a couple of days away from the event. But I had the honor and privilege of being really standing in the outfield, in center field, as the East and West team walked out of the left and right field fence, respectively, and really have the managers. One of our global ambassador, Albert Pujols, was on the field with me. One of our co-owners, Robbie Cano and Bartolo Colon, who were also players, and to just be there and to address that group as one of the co-founders, representing the entire co-founders group and the entire ownership group, as the EVP of baseball operations, as the vice chairman, to really have the opportunity to address that group and kind of just reinforce that, guys, in a few minutes, history is about to be made. In the history of the world, what's crazy to think, Skiff, in the history of the world, professional baseball was never played on the Arabian Peninsula ever in the history of the world. And, being there to watch that first practice, to watch those guys go out and just loosen up their arm and have a catch, and then see them take BP and, go through infield and outfield work, was just like a surreal moment in my life, because the first time we all stood at Dubai International Stadium and we came up with this crazy idea to bring professional baseball to the desert, to the Middle East, it seemed possible. Then, there were so many milestones throughout that journey that made it possible if we would have hit those milestones. And at times it felt like we wouldn't have, and we weren't going to. But somewhere or another, through extreme leadership, through the over-delivering of our CEO and the group that was behind him, and the entire, Baseball United workforce, and really a blessing, I truly believe, from the Almighty, to be able to stand there in the outfield to address that group was like a moment that I will never forget in my life. When I talk about it, I actually have the hair on my arm standing up and have some goosebumps here,
I
because
do
that
too.
was a moment for sure that was like, I don't know. I mean, I've done some pretty big things in my life, as I said, some of the things I did, but I don't believe any of them top that moment.
Like I said, I got goosebumps as well, and I wasn't there for any of that. I got to see the games and all that, but I certainly had no role in making any of that happen. So I can only imagine that feeling. John, we only got a couple more minutes left, so before I let you go, is any parting words about the league, about your experience, anything you want to let the fans know about Baseball United?
Well, what I would just say is, again, I'm just going to go back to our beginning. Like, you know, what's so powerful about where we are today is really where we came from, right? And I think that when I talked about where we came from under a different entity, under different leadership at that time, what's so inspiring to me is that, when that situation, got out of control and we just knew things weren't being done the right way, when myself, Cash, then Lark and Mo, and some others, for example, Warren, my brother Warren Miedreich, who's one of the other co-founders, got together and really decided that the dream was still there, right? We wanted to still do this, and we just didn't want to do it, the wrong way. And at that point, we made the very difficult decision. As you can imagine, we were already pretty far down the road at that point. We made the difficult decision that at the time seemed like insane. Like, hey, cut ourselves clean, create a completely new entity, move on and start from scratch. And that's exactly what we did. To think, within 2 years of that, we are where we are. We've built what we've built under Cash's leadership. We've created and assembled, you said, the most legendary ownership group in the history of the game of baseball, and really in sports, is just unbelievable. And my parting words are, when you have a group of individuals who are willing to do that, for the right principle and ethical and moral reasons, then, to be honest with you, I truly believe collectively led by Cash, the group collectively, what can't we achieve? I truly believe that we're going to continue to, prove the naysayers wrong, to make possible the impossible. And I truly believe, as I said, this league will long outlast any of us. It's just an honor and privilege to have been on this ride and to continue to really to continue down this path and be on this ride. But, more good things. And my parting words were, look, from where we came from to where we are to where we're going, there's no doubt that we're going to continue to positively impact the world for the right reasons with the right people.
John Miedreich, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining the Baseball United podcast, and I'm looking forward to the next time we get to speak.
Appreciate you, Skiff. Thank you for doing this.